Well, good morning. How are you this beautiful Tuesday morning? My name's Christine and I'm a trainer for Google's free skills training program, the Google Digital Garage. Thanks for joining us for today's training session, which is brought to you by BT Skills for Tomorrow. We've got a double feature for you this morning. We're going to be kicking off right now with Find Your Career Goals, which is to help anybody at any stage of their career to work out what it is you want to be doing next. And then following that, we've got a great session coming up at 10:45 with my colleague Hannah, who's going to be talking to you all about how to grow your business through sustainability. So I really hope you stay with us for the whole morning. There will, however, be a different link to join in with that second session, which we're going to share with you again at the end. So there's a reason to stay with me if ever I heard one. For what we're doing right now, though, you might not have used this particular platform before. So before we start, let's get a little bit used to how it works. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask my wonderful colleague behind the scenes, Glenn, to pop a poll up for us. And then we're just going to see how the polls work. I'm going to ask you where you're joining from. That could be, it says city. Of course, we realise not everybody lives in a city. So maybe you live in a town, maybe you live in a more rural area. It'd be great to know. Interesting for you as well, if polls should hopefully have popped up, and if you let us know your town or your city or your area, you'll be able to see where everyone else is joining from as well. There's going to be another poll towards the end, and that means you'll be all ready and prepped to get involved as we go through. Now, we've also got another chance to communicate, and that's through the Q&A area. And that's a lot going on for any one person. So alongside me today, I've got my colleague, Sarah. And Sarah is going to be moderating the Q&A area, which is where we're going to find the chat. So just because it's called Q&A or questions and answers doesn't mean that you can only use that for questions. What we love to do, especially with this session, which is much more like a workshop session than maybe some of the more traditional taught sessions that you might have seen from us before. This session is going to be much more like a workshop. There's lots of time for you to think, and it'd be great if you could pass us some of your thoughts as you go. So popping that in the Q&A, popping all your comments into that, and that's where you'll find Sarah, and Sarah will be helping you out. So, I can see we've got people joining us from kind of everywhere, really, all over the place. So that is great to have you all with us this morning. Next thing to do then is to think about maybe why you're joining us today. So let's utilize that Q&A area. In the Q&A area, why not let us know why you joined us? Let Sarah know why you joined us this morning, what you're hoping to get, what stage of your career are you? Are you right at the beginning of your career? Are you somebody who's worked for a little while and maybe you're not feeling it? Maybe circumstances have changed. We've got loads of people who maybe the change is out of your control. There's redundancies around, or you've decided that whatever you're doing right now in your work life, maybe there's just something not feeling so right. Let me know what it is. Let Sarah know what situation you're in, because it's fantastic. Couple of things, you might see that there's quite a few people on the session this morning who are in the same kind of position you are. And it also helps us as a team to really make sure we direct our thoughts and comments to what it is that you want to hear. All right, so any questions, any comments into that Slido Q&A area as we go through. Lots of opportunities to interact together this morning, and Sarah's going to help address that all. All right then, let's have a think about today's session. As I say, today's session is an interactive session. So much more like a workshop than a lecture. I really want to hear from you. You're probably going to need a couple of technical pieces of kit with you. I'm going to want you to have a pen and a piece of paper. Of course, if you fancy it, you can take notes with any other note-taking device that you like, but I find pen and paper really works well for this kind of exercise. So what's today going to be about? So we really want to help you and think about you know, what I want you to gift yourself this time this morning to think about, what you want from your working life, what you want from your career. Because I think a lot of the time, actually, that's not something that we always do. Quite often we'll follow down a career path and maybe think, and we get a little bit down the line and work out and realize we have not maybe got that idea. So we're going to really think a little bit deeper than maybe you have before. Hopefully there'll be a couple of different ways of unpicking some of your thoughts and feelings around your work and your career and your life circumstances, that because different careers work for different people. So as I say, this session is much more like a workshop, lots of chances for you to get involved. I really want to hear those thoughts. Sarah will be asking you some questions herself. We'll also hear from Sarah as to how she's feeling about these things. And also we're going to, I need to be really clear at this point that at the end of this, I'm hoping that you will have started to take your first steps. There's lots and lots of food for thought. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm what's known as a reflective thinker. So if I start with some of the workshop that we're doing today, if you ask me a question about it, actually what I'm going to find is I'll get my best answer in a couple of days, probably when I'm doing the washing up or the ironing or something else where I'm not, or going for a walk and getting out in nature. So I'm not expecting you at the end of this session to have all the answers boxed off and ready to just change careers and be off and running. What I'm hoping for you is that you will have a really good idea of how to start and what direction to go in. Maybe there's going to be more information to gather. Maybe there's going to be some more learning that needs to happen. Whatever it is, I'm hoping you're going to walk away from here today feeling buoyed, feeling keen and excited to do some more research, to recenter yourself, or really, really happy that you're on the right path, because that's a great outcome as well. Just before I go on any further, I just want to, one of the things that you might find today is that you want to learn some new skills, and there's lots of ways out there at the moment to learn new skills, which is amazing. I just wanted to highlight that Google have a free, flexible online training program available, and these training programs are designed to help anybody to earn job-ready skills in high-growth, high-demand careers. We're thinking things like IT support and project management, maybe data analytics, digital marketing, user experience design. These kind of careers that we need lots and lots of people to work in the digital economy. But how do you get the skills if you've never worked in those economies? And one of the ways is that even if you've got no relevant experience, no degree needed, you can access the Google Career Certificates. And in the UK, you can access them via free scholarships that are delivered through our selected partners. If you want to know more about that, head over to goo.gle/career cert UK. And that's hopefully one avenue, maybe, if you think, I'd love to do this, but I don't know how. There are avenues out there that you can get those skills that you want if it's what you want. All right, then. What I want you to do now is I want you to think back. We're going to spend a little bit of time before we get into the future gazing. And I want you to just reflect for yourself. And as I say, a lot of today's session is kind of reflective. It is, important for you to think about these things. But it'd be great if you could share some of your thoughts and feelings with Sarah in that Q&A area. And think about when you felt fulfilled in work, all right? Maybe that was a job. Maybe it was a volunteer role. Not all of our work is paid. Maybe it was, if you've not got a long career history, maybe actually you can think about something that, especially if you're really starting out at the beginning of your career, or maybe for whatever reason you've taken a bit of a career break. Think back to some of those tasks and activities you've done. Maybe it was something when you were studying, a particular project you enjoyed, a way of working. everybody starts out with a blank sheet of paper. Everybody starts out, nobody starts out rather with a full career history. So if you are right at the beginning, if you're lucky enough to be right at the beginning, think back to anything you've done in the past. It could even be what you're doing now if you're feeling really fulfilled. And sometimes this can be a very, very difficult thing. Not always, we don't always get to make our own choices around these things. Hands up now, I've been made redundant 4 times in my life. And it's always a very, very emotionally charged time. It's a difficult time to go through. I will say, for those who, if anyone is going through that at the minute, that, it's always been something that helped me in the long run to readjust and reset myself. So think about anything you've done in the past that was a work role that you found fulfilling. Put yourself back in that time. What were you doing? What were you actually doing that that made it feel so great? Who were you around? Who were the people you were working with? What kind of tasks were you doing? What was your purpose, your mission? For me, I used to work, I'm a trainer by trade. That's what I do. And I had a job a few years back now, and it was part-time. And what I was doing was I was working for a charity and training up volunteers who were going into school and helping children who were struggling with their reading. So for me, that was really fulfilling. I was surrounded by a great team. I got to work with lots of lovely people each day, all those excited, enthusiastic people with a common purpose to go off and do something amazing. I was doing, work I loved. And I felt in the extra sprinkle on top was that I felt like I was helping the world in a way, helping those. I wasn't helping those children directly, but I was helping somebody who was. So think about, for you, are there any roles where you've really felt good about yourself? You've wanted to go into work, you've enjoyed what you were doing, you've been proud and satisfied when you've come home after a hard day. Okay. As I say, if there's any thoughts around that, if you want to let Sarah know what that was, pop that into that Q&A area, and she'll be able to see just what it is that was part of your life. But it's really mostly important that you get this down, jot this down for yourself, because this is going to lead on through the whole of the session we're doing. And one of the questions we quite often get is, fulfillment and feeling great at a job is all very well, but we all know that you need to pay the bills, all right? And when we thought about, what's the most, what makes people think about going to work, and money is incredibly important. So we'll think about that as well. But this is an interesting thought just at this point. 3 out of 10 workers in the UK do not believe they have good prospects for career development. So they feel they're stuck in a dead end. They feel they're at the mercy of other people. They don't feel like they're going to, they're not satisfied, they're not fulfilled. And actually now I would flip this on its head and say, actually, my career development is actually nobody else's business. My career development is for me to take into my own hands. So rather than falling into somebody, these 3 out of 10 who, what are you going to do about it? Don't just sit there and let somebody else be in charge. I want for you to really consciously take hold of that career development for you, because we spend 1/3 of our lives at work. So I don't think I want any of you to fall into this statistic of feeling out of control, feeling like it's not part. So I talked about fulfillment. And actually, we maybe jumped a little bit ahead really with that, because fulfillment, it's a funny word. Fulfillment in work can be looked at in many different ways. The way we're going to look at it today is we're going to break it out into some separate elements that people tend to find fulfilling. All right. So there are 3 key elements to a job that people find fulfilling. First of all, do you enjoy doing it? All right. If you don't actually enjoy the day-to-day work, you're not going to find that role long-term fulfilling. All right. We're talking about sustainability later in the morning. That's business sustainability. This is actually about your own sustainability. How can you sustain yourself in a role that you don't enjoy? The next key element is, are you any good at it? Does it play to your strengths? Do you get a chance to excel, or are you always making lots of mistakes? And because if you basically, I mean, I do think, not going to lie, that for me, those two things do tend to go hand in hand. Because maybe if I enjoy it, I'm going to work harder to get better. But also if I'm naturally no good at it, I'm probably not going to enjoy it either. So they are kind of flip, sides of the same coin. But when we're evaluating this fulfilling job, we can do things that we enjoy that we're not good at. And we can be good at stuff that we don't necessarily enjoy. So whilst they are linked, they can be quite separate as well. But for this to be a career, a job, a sustainable source of income long term, somebody somewhere has to be prepared to pay you for it. So is it something that people value, that you can put a value on, that you are going to be able to get that? Is there a market for it? Is it going to be able to be saleable? All right. Because for it to be a career, it has to be part of all three. So you do a lot of things in your life that aren't your career. We only spend a third of our time at work. Maybe if we spend a third of our time sleeping, what do we do with the rest of it? So there are chances to do lots and lots of things with our life. But we are looking at here to evaluate a career. And this particular theory has been based on, inspired by, I guess, the Ikigai method. So it is one way to look at how to find that career. Let's break it out slightly. If you just enjoy doing it, but you're no good at it and nobody's prepared to pay you for it, then we're up here. It's just for fun. All right. Lots of things that we enjoy doing. I enjoy quite a lot of sport. I am terrible at it all, but that doesn't stop me getting out on a court and, spending time with friends, retrieving my ball from the back of the court where I've missed it. That can be interesting and exciting too. Nobody's going to pay me for it, so it is just something I do for fun. There can be things that you're good at that you actually don't enjoy, and nobody's going to pay you to do it. For me, that is something like the washing up or the ironing. I am hands down the best person at doing the washing up in my house, or at least that's what they tell me when they've left the dishes by the side of the sink. So that's a practice chore. I don't particularly enjoy doing it. I'm pretty good at it. The dishes always seem to come back clean. Nobody's going to pay me to do it, especially I might be able to get a job doing it, but honestly, it's not going to be that fulfilling career that we're looking for here. All right. And then there's going to be things that people will pay for, people will value, but they're just not for you. For me, it was, all those big careers that you were meant to want to have when you were at school, go and study and be a doctor, go and study and be a lawyer. I didn't really enjoy study. I didn't enjoy working hard. I'm not very good at remembering facts and figures and passing exams. I'm a much more practical person. Give me a problem, I'll be the one to help you solve it. Give me some people, I'll talk to them. So even though there are lots of jobs out there that are fantastic careers, the careers my brothers have or what have you, they weren't for me because I didn't enjoy that kind of work and I wasn't any good at it. Then we get crossovers. So here, if we're good at something and we enjoy doing it, but nobody's going to pay us for it, it can be a skilled hobby. All right. There's lots of things out there that might come in. You might be good at sport. Sport might come in as your skilled hobby. I'm actually pretty good at playing the flute. Thank you very much. But nobody's not so good that anybody's ever going to pay me for it. So you can have things that you do that are skilled hobbies that you enjoy doing, you're good at, they enrich your life. But if nobody's going to pay you for them, they can't be your career. If you've got, and lots of people can be here, they've got something they enjoy doing and people do value it, they enjoy, they're happy, they're getting on with their life, they are going to get paid for doing it, but they're actually not very good at it. They make a lot of mistakes. They drop a lot of plates. It's probably going to end, you're always going to stay at the bottom in the low-skilled jobs there. If you're not very good at it, you're never going to move up. You're probably not going to find that career fulfilling as other people move on past you. If we're good at something, and people value it, people are going to pay for it, but you don't enjoy doing it, then we actually hit one of the hardest places. And that's where you're in a boring job. Okay. Now, a boring job, because people will value it and pay for it, because you are already good at it, I find a lot of people, maybe later in their careers, find themselves in a place where they actually really don't like the work they do, but they don't know how to get out and change. If I've been doing something for a while, I'm good at it, I didn't go into it because, I necessarily actively chose to go into it, or maybe I actively chose it and it became something that wasn't good. That's when you stop enjoying it, or you never really enjoyed it in the first place. I've had this when I've been promoted. And actually, I've been promoted to a level where I'm not enjoying the work. Maybe I'm managing other people. Maybe, bits of I'm good at it, but I'm not doing any of the stuff I enjoy, and I'm left with the harder tasks that I don't really enjoy, but I am still good at them, and people will still pay me for them. You can find yourself stuck in that position. What we want for you is to find this magic middle, here in the middle of our Venn diagram, that's something you enjoy, something you're good at, and something people value, and that's where you're going to find that fulfilling career. All right. So just a quick one for you, and I started to mention it earlier. Lots of people, I'm going to put my hands up and say, we know you probably, most people in the world have to work to live. All right. But long term, that money alone for most people is not enough of a motivator to make their careers fulfilling. So although once we've got that, the basic need, think back to those people who are stuck in that job that they're good at, but they don't enjoy it, and they're getting really well paid. From the outside, that can feel like a really odd position for them to be in. They should be happy and grateful because they're getting the money. But if they're not enjoying it, they're spending a third of their life doing something they don't like. So actually at work, the top motivator, once you've passed your basics of, your rent, your mortgage and your food and your heating, then actually being recognized for your work. Feeling like you're doing a good job, being known for doing a good job. That's what motivates people. So today we're going to focus for a little while now on things that aren't just the money for the next little bit of our session. Before we do that, I'm just going to check in with Sarah, and I can see that there's no questions that she hasn't been able to answer. That's not a surprise. As I say, this is much more a workshop session. We want to hear your thoughts and gauge your feelings. We're going to go into an exercise now, actually. And what's really important with this exercise is that you do participate, because quite often we can almost crowdsource some answers where everyone together, we can spark off each other. This workshop was originally designed to be done face-to-face. And so the more ideas we get from the whole group, the more ideas seem to spark in the rest of the group. So if you are thinking something, jot it down for yourself, but then please do pop it in and let us know what you're thinking, what you're feeling. We're going to start with something that you enjoy doing. That's the first of our circles, all right? So we're going to focus in, split these out and focus in just on something you enjoy for right now. And as I say, we're going to do this in the form of an exercise. So, my friends, pens and paper at the ready. And then once you've answered the questions for yourself on the pens and paper, do pop some things into me. All right, so what I'm going to do in a moment, we're going to look at a list of things that people say they enjoy at work. We're focusing in on that enjoyment, all right? And for the whole exercise, we're going to look at 4 different questions. What I'd like to do is I want to get you to think about things that you enjoy in a work context. If you don't have a big career history, don't worry. Think about those tasks you've done. A career break, for example, is a fantastic opportunity to learn things that you actually enjoy doing. Which are the parts of the caring role that you've taken, or the traveling that you've done that you really enjoyed and you want to bring more of those things in. So let's take a look at that list. And what I want you to do is just take a look at this list and jot down for yourself anything and everything on this list that you enjoy doing in a work context. All right? So that could be having ideas, helping others, secure and stable work, working independently, or organising other people. You know, there's no right and wrong answers here. Actually, that's really, really important. There aren't any right or wrong answers in any of the rest of this session. This is all about helping you to understand for yourself what motivates you, what's going to make you feel fulfilled. All right. So work-life balance, being an expert, organising people, solving problems, lots and lots of things that people tend to enjoy. And really key here is don't just jot something on your list because you think it's something that's that you're going to be doing in the role you're going for, or it's something that other people enjoy and you think you probably should. I want you to be genuine and honest and authentic with yourself. You're the only one who has to see this. I would like it if you shared it with Sarah, but Sarah's lovely. She's not going to judge anyone for anything. All right. So just while you're doing that, have a real good think about these. Just to let you know that these haven't just been plucked out of the air. This exercise is based on the work of Professor Edgar Schein. And Edgar Schein has been working on this since the 1970s. So they're all pretty well tested. And time again, these are the themes of things where, you know, people, well, I had somebody I was talking to and they said, oh, I love being creative. So is it the having ideas part of the creativity that you love? The being an expert of the creativity? The problem solving of the creativity? All of them, they can actually all break down into these different areas. And sometimes so creativity will form into several different areas. So as I say, jot those down for yourself. For me, I like helping others. I really like working independently. And I love being an expert. I also like having ideas. Did I say that one? I like quite a lot of these, I'm not going to lie. I like having a good work-life balance as well. So for me, there's quite a few on there that I really do like, but make sure you're honest with yourself. Okay, next. And as I say, you can pop those through to Sarah if you like, but what I really want is your top 3. Let Sarah know in the question area your 1, 2, 3. If you could only do one of these things for the rest of your time, what would it be? If you could only do 3 of them, not just which 3 would it be, but I really want you to focus in and rank them. And you might decide actually at this point that, you know, it's a good idea. This might be one of those things you want to think about for a little while. That's okay. You can think about them as you go. So of those 3, if I were to be put on the spot, I think I love being an expert. I love helping others. And I really love having a good work-life balance, actually. If anything, the last 2 years has shown me that's so super important to me. All right. I can see, I've got Sarah's here. That's good to know. So Sarah, and I know Sarah, she loves having a good work-life balance. She loves working independently and she loves helping people too. These are really good that we've managed to completely align, even though we do similar work. We are good friends. So I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that we've managed to go for the same ones, but I promise you we didn't look for it completely. I've got Glenn, who's with us today, who loves helping people. He loves organising people, yes. And he too likes his work-life balance. So how about you? What have you got on your list? Do pop them in and let Sarah know. So now you've got your top 3, your most enjoyable first, then your second, then your third. All right. And if you could only ever do those 3 things, you'd probably have a lovely, lovely job. We understand that not everyone can do everything they enjoy all the time, but really it is important to really think about for yourself what it is you like to do. Okay, that's brilliant. What I'm going to do now is move it on slightly. All right, so park that list off to one side. The next thing I want you to do is to look at the phrases again. But now I want you to think about what you do right now for a living. All right. And think about in your day-to-day, in your current career, your current work, the current things that you're doing with your time that are your work or your work related, of that list, what's actually going on? All right. Have a think, be really honest. Now, if you're not currently in work, maybe you're taking a break, maybe you've, as I say, maybe you're out of work at the moment, or you're looking to change careers for whatever reason. Maybe you just don't have that much work experience. You might want to think back to the work that you've done in the past. And think about, maybe those are the types of jobs you're applying for now. If you're at the job seeking stage, think about those types of jobs you apply for. This is also really interesting. And think about, excuse me, if you're at that point of you're resetting because you are looking for work, maybe you've never worked before and you're planning a future career. Try and think about that future career. What do you envisage are the actual activities that will make up your day to day? What sorts of things do you think you'll be doing? Okay. So I'd mentioned right back at the beginning that I used to have a job that I found very fulfilling when I was training people. And I left, and people say, well, why did you leave that role? And the reason I left the role is I was promoted. So I was promoted into a role where all of a sudden I had to organize other people. I had to solve problems. And I was several steps removed then from the actual helping of others. And rather than just working independently and getting on and doing a good job, I had to organize other people. And I wasn't an expert. Okay. And I didn't have any work-life balance either. All right. So think about the work when I was in that role, that promotion role that I should have been really glad to have, actually became a lot less fulfilling for me. So when you've taken a look at that, the final exercise is to line those two things up side by side. All right. So what differences? What's the same on your list of things you absolutely love and enjoy and things that you're doing currently or you're planning for in your future career? So for me, I was, as I say, I loved working, having a great work-life balance. I lost my work-life balance. I loved working independently. All of a sudden, I have to be organizing other people. I like being an expert, and all of a sudden, I felt all at sea because I was doing a job that I didn't feel adequately prepped to do. So have a think and have a look at how they match up. I can see Sarah saying that actually her top three are now currently the same as the one she wanted to. I'm not surprised because Sarah's been doing this sort of work a little while and it's taken her a while to get here. But what she's managed to do is to engineer a career that absolutely plays to the things she enjoys doing, which is why she's so good at it, I suppose. With Glenn, who we talked to before, who actually only has one of his three that are matching up. So that probably means, as he says, it's time to re-evaluate. That's really true. So that's what this exercise can help us to do. Basically, if you think honestly and actively about what you really enjoy at work, more you do that, and as I say, this probably isn't just a 20-minute exercise on a workshop. I want you to take these lists away and really think deeply and long and hard about them. The more you do this, the more you can do what Sarah seems to have done and deliberately seek out the things you enjoy, prioritize the things you enjoy over things you don't. Best will in the world, there's always going to be some elements of any role that we don't enjoy. It's very unlikely to get a job completely without paperwork and only out being creative all the time. But if there's enough of that enjoyment in there, then actually we can put up with some of the less enjoyable parts. It's when those less enjoyable parts take over and we're not doing any of the work that we enjoy. If there's wide differences between the two lists, it's probably a really good idea to start focusing on the sort of job you're going to be happier in. And if you're at the point of deciding on a career, it's really important that you take your own needs into account. One of the things I hate to see is when people are doing a role because they think somebody else wants them to do that, because of the perceived prestige, or that somebody else would be great at that role, so they should be good at it too. I want you to be honest. I want you to be active. I want you to be honest with yourself more than anybody else. In any healthy workplace, there are a range of different people, and different people enjoy different things. So make sure that you are heading yourself into that kind of place, the kinds of work where you're going to be happy. All right. Okay, just checking in again with Sarah, and I can see all looks good out there. No questions at the moment. Thanks for your participation in that exercise. We're going to carry on now and focus on our second circle, the second area of our Venn diagram, which is to look for things that you're good at. All right, we're going to explore a little bit around this. And I've got some more technical theory stuff for you actually on this one. So this is good. So what I'm going to talk about now is there's a well-researched Dunning-Kruger effect is what we're going to look at. If you want to look it up later, hopefully I'll take you through it. But what we're going to explore right now is how human beings are notoriously bad at knowing what we are actually good at ourselves. All right. So our own individual perceptions of our own strengths might not actually be reflected in reality. All right. So I'm going to show you this graph, and I'm going to take you through some stages on it. And along the bottom axis there, we've got competence, your skill level. How good are you? All right. So our skill level, we've just got it marked sliding scale from no skill at all, no competence. Average, you're about as good as half, you're in the middle, you're better than half the people if you're average. And that's what people always say, oh, average is a bad thing. Average is amazing if you're better than half of the people who are doing it. All the way up to expert, you're in that top bracket, all right? And that's your competence level, your skill level. Now, you might assume that when I plot how good somebody is against how confident they are, so up my side here, I've got the confidence goes from low to high. What you might expect is the better I get at something, the more confident I am. That graph should be a straight line. If human beings behaved in a scientific manner, then the better we got at something, the more confident we would be. Human beings aren't like that. You probably know this already. And Dunning-Kruger effect describes how humans are notoriously bad at knowing their own strengths and weaknesses. All right. So Dunning and Kruger looked at how our perception of abilities change as we gain experience, as we get better. So before we can get any better, we need to start out. And when we're starting out, here we are right down here. We've never done something before. We have absolutely no skill level. So it stands to reason that we don't have any confidence at doing it. That makes sense. It's the last time for a little while that this graph makes sense. I'm not going to lie to you. Because what tends to happen is we get a tiny bit of competence. We learn a little bit of what there is to know. Maybe you're learning guitar and you manage your first couple of chord changes. You can play your first Beatles song. Maybe you're learning to use a spreadsheet and you put in a column of numbers and you add them up with a calculator, and then you put in your little sum and it adds them up for you and you get the same number. All right, you've achieved something. You went from having no competence to being able to do something. And what actually happens is your confidence tends to skyrocket. We are still, however, at a time of where we haven't actually learned very much. We haven't had time to learn very much, okay? But in reality, what's going on is we don't really know. We've done more than we ever thought possible. We don't really know how much more there is to learn. And Dunning-Kruger effect explains that people in the lower percentiles of ability, in other words, when we are not very good, we tend to overestimate our abilities. I'm going to ask yourself, maybe imagine this in terms of, people's confidence, bad drivers, how confident bad drivers are as they smash past wing mirrors. they overestimate their own abilities. All right. We just don't know yet how much better we could be. And it's important to note as well that we don't just keep getting better at things. A lot of us will stay, like those bad drivers, will stay not very good at stuff for very long. Because to be average at something is actually to be pretty good, because you are better than half the people. Mathematically, the average is kind of in the middle, all right? So imagine now, we were super confident when we learnt a few things. We go on and we learn a little bit more. And often if you're actually quite good at something, you're likely to underestimate your ability. Maybe that's because actually, if we're naturally good at something, we don't even think it's a big deal. All right. So we're not talking about false modesty. Oh, no, I'm no good at that. We're thinking about genuinely inside. If you are good at something, you might not even recognize that how good you are. And you might not be confident in doing it. You might not be able to pop it on that CV when we get into CVs later, because you just not think. Now, sometimes it's because we don't think it's a big deal. Sometimes by the time we get to being better than half the people and being average, we actually know that there's so many more people who are better at it than us. Therefore, our confidence actually dips, So what's the final stage? That most people in most areas are around the middle, towards the bottom. Occasionally, some things we might get better than average at. And every so often, something might come along in our lives and we actually can become an expert in that. Most people are only expert in, at most, one or two things. But if you do attain, people who do attain that expert level of skill are much more likely to be able to correctly evaluate their abilities. So once you do get to expert, you're back up at confident again, which is amazing. Which is probably because, you do know that what you've been through. So it's the only other place on our graph that it actually makes sense. Our confidence and our competence are actually correlating again. So what that actually means, knowing all that, means that we're actually a terrible judge of our own abilities. So to truly understand our strengths, I want you to think about looking outside yourself. All right. So the next exercise, because we know why now it's difficult to look at our own abilities, I'm going to take you through a practical exercise that you can do to help you to identify your own strengths. All right. And the first thing I want you to do is pick some people. All right. These people need to know you well, but they probably shouldn't know you too well. All right. So I want you to think of 3 people who know you well, maybe in a work setting. All right. That could be a colleague you've worked with. It could be a former boss. It could be somebody who's reported into you. Could be a friend, could be a neighbour. It could be if you do sport or music, or you're involved in a church or any kind of a voluntary work. Somebody from those areas. What we're trying to tend to steer you away from here is just picking family. And the reason is because your family's not going to be able to correctly identify. If you were to ask my mum, hopefully my mum, love her, would basically say, oh yeah, she's brilliant at everything. Oh, she's fantastic. If you were to ask one of my brothers, they'd probably say I was terrible at everything. So those people who are too close, they know you too well almost, they're going to have possibly the same sorts of blind spots as you do when it comes to your own strengths and weaknesses. They are going to, especially in the case of my brothers, probably quite similar. So things that, in a family might not have, you might be the third best. There was one with the cricketers, you're not even the best cricketer in your family. They were still they were playing for their country. Their big brother was better at it than them. So, there's that idea that if somebody's too close, it's harder for them to see what's really going on. All right. So think of 3 people. I'm going to pick just one of them for I've got a former colleague in there. I've got my old boss, maybe a lecturer from college. I've actually got a sports coach that I've worked quite closely with. So think about those kinds of people in your life. All right. And now I want you to jot down these 3 questions. All right. So important to jot them down, because you're not going to be able to do 3 questions for 3 people and really give it a lot of thought in the 5 minutes we've got to spend on this exercise. All right. So I want you to identify your strengths from their perspective. So when you jot down this question, first question, I always ask, and instead of the X's, I want you to put your name. And if you're artistic, you could even draw a picture of the person. My old sports coach is called Rob. So Rob, I draw a little stick person because I'm terrible at art. And that's been evaluated externally. I know I'm terrible at it. And I'm going to put 3 little speech bubbles off. If Rob were talking, Rob would say, I always ask Christine for help with. Then I'm going to think of some of the things that Rob has asked me for help with in the past. Then I'm going to have another speech bubble that says, Christine knows a lot about. And off there, I'm going to put what Rob thinks I would know about. Okay. And then looking back over our relationship again, I'm going to say, Rob would say that he can always ask Christine too. So as I say, jot these down for yourselves. For instance, Rob always asks me to help when we had new people join the team, to look after them for their first few sessions, make sure they felt welcome, check in with them afterwards to make sure that everything, that they were happy, because we knew actually that if people were happy, then they'd want to come back. Okay, so think of the things that you might not even think of them as skills and strengths. All right. So we've popped a few examples up here. So for me, it was Christine knows a lot about, well, hopefully, things like digital marketing and using of the social media to try and get new people into the team. I always ask Christine for help with setting up at the beginning of a session, emailing out to parents, whatever it is. There's lots of things in there. And I deliberately mentioned the helping other people be part of the team. Sometimes things that are really valuable to other people aren't the things we would necessarily expect. Being welcoming, being able to enter a room and make other people feel at ease. Being able to talk to people, being able to meet those new people, motivate other people, be able to make things or do things or finishing off the task, never leaving something half done. These are things that we might not value in ourselves because they're just who we are. But when you ask other people, that's when you'll really start to get a good idea from an external point of view. So as I say, you can sit and go through this yourself. Homework-wise, what would be really good to do is to actually jot these questions down and book a cup of tea. We're coming up to Christmas, go and have a mince pie and a nice hot chocolate with some of these trusted people. Go and ask them, catch up with them. Because what would be really interesting to see is what you think they would value for and what they would say that they would do this for. And actually there again, think you might even see that Dunning-Kruger effect in action when your list is maybe different from their list. Okay, so really good activity to do. And as I say, do go back and catch up with those people if you have time. What I'm going to do now is just pause, but I can see from Sarah that we're all good on questions. As I say, this isn't a technical session, but do pop your thoughts and let Sarah know how you're feeling about some of the exercises we've done. It really is good to get that level of chat from you. And I mentioned at the beginning, it shouldn't be the first thing that we look at. When we're looking for a fulfilling career, we do kind of need to park the money bit aside whilst we investigate. However, for something that is fulfilling to be a career, it has to be something that somebody somewhere is prepared to pay you to do. Else it falls in that just for fun. All right. Those skilled hobbies that we have. So the final element is about the money sides of things. And that doesn't mean it's always about looking for a job. There are different ways than maybe have been traditionally thought of, especially with the advent of the internet and being able to help people to reach careers jobs and tasks that they never thought they could. So I'm going to share a couple of examples. First of all, we've got Abby. Now, Abby worked in technology. She worked at a large entertainment business. And, I don't know if you've ever worked in a big business. There's always somebody's birthday or retirement or babies coming. There's always a need for cake in a big business. And lots of workplaces have an idea that they bring cakes on their birthday. So there's always cakes going on in the office. Abby used to be the one who baked and brought in the cakes for her colleague. She loved doing it. So she'd bring in cakes. Now, what actually happened is people, when they knew Abby was bringing a cake because it was somebody's birthday, they'd kind of hang around at cake giving time because they wanted to try the cake. Abby was amazing at this. And people started coming up to her and asking if they would bake a cake. And they would pay her to bake a cake for a nephew's birthday or a friend's wedding or what have you. The cakes were so good and she got so many people asking her about them that she realised that this was a potential work stream. She loved doing it. She was good at it. And people were willing to pay for them. So classic story, really. She knew she enjoyed it. She found people. Other people validated that she was good at it because they kept trying to buy them from her. And she turned it from a skilled hobby, from her passion project, into something she can actually make a living out of it. She had opened up Abby's Pantry. They started off in London and she's now actually moved up to Edinburgh, where she can live the life she wants, doing the things she loves doing and getting paid to do it. Which is something, as I say, maybe even 5 or 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been an option available. But because of the internet, because of working from home and all kinds, there's lots of other options available to people outside just doing a job in a company. Claire and Rachel, similarly, they're friends and they wanted to start a business. And they wanted to work together. Claire was a barrister and Rachel was a sonographer. But they went on a start your own business course and they looked for a gap in the market. They actually set up How Do I Do, which is a supplier for people, a directory, because they saw a gap that if people were entering same-sex marriages, that they couldn't find planners and cakes and bunting and all those things that people sell for weddings. They were all Mr. and Mrs. There were very little at the time, Mrs. and Mrs., for example. So they set up the How Do I Do site, which helps people of all different sexual orientations to find the suppliers and wedding planners that they need. They had to do some learning along the way. They learned to set up a business, but they knew they wanted to work it together, but independently. They wanted to work for themselves and they wanted to do something that they really enjoyed, really felt passionate about. And that's how they set up their business. Shaquille worked doing HR as part of a big HR department in a big company. So he was a small cog in a big wheel sort of thing. He was made redundant and he actually used that as a turning point because he realised that he was good at the HR stuff, but actually he didn't want to work for somebody else. He only got to practice a tiny part of his skills when he was doing his HR. He had a role that was quite limiting. What he wanted to do was work across the range and be, a bit more creative, use all of his skills, be useful, rather than just churning out documentation. So he was good at working in HR, but he wanted to work independently. He wanted to work for himself. So he actually set up as an independent HR consultant. He he went out on LinkedIn and found smaller businesses that had part-time HR needs. So he used his big company experience and took those skills to those smaller companies that needed him but couldn't afford him full-time. And he found several of those. And he grew his connections. He did the work. There's a lot of work to be done once you've made those decisions. But actually, he managed to combine something he enjoyed, something he was good at, and he found a market. He found his niche. So once you know what you're good at, because you've come up with your lists, and what you enjoy doing, how are you going to make a living out of it? So this final exercise, I guess, is we're going to take it as homework, but I want you to start making a really long list. So think of the types of job that value what you're good at and what you enjoy. Okay, but don't just limit yourself to jobs that already exist, professions that are already there. Are there other businesses, just like Shaquille did? Could you take your knowledge of working in one environment and take it into a new environment? If you've got digital skills, there are tons of smaller businesses who need those things. Lots of skills are available. Or a bit more like Abby did, can you create a business and find those people who see the value in what you're doing? How do you go about then telling your story? You might become the small business yourself. What I want you to do right now, jot down at least one place that you might be valued, that you maybe hadn't thought of before. One job you would enjoy and that you could be good at. One profession. We're not thinking about things you can step into tomorrow. I want you to be putting your long-term goals here. And then in a sec, we'll look at how you work towards them. Be expansive with your list. What I don't want you to do is just have one thing. This is what I'm going for. I want you to start with a long list of things you could do, not that single decision for what you're going to do. All right. So start with, and I would genuinely pop these 3 headings and write something down under each of those headings. Not everybody wants to work independently and start a business. That's fine. Which businesses are out there that would value your skills? What jobs could you train for that you're really going to enjoy? All right. Places to go and do that research. The internet's fantastic. You can look at jobs boards. I like to do almost a reverse search. So if I put the skills in that I have or the things I enjoy doing and see what into the jobs board and see what jobs match the skill set I have. If you're looking to enhance your CV to get practice in some of these areas in a work environment, check out things like Do.it. Do.it's a nationwide volunteering site. You can volunteer, find voluntary work on Do.it. Charity jobs, if you want that fulfilling role and you want it to be fulfilling because you're helping others, charity jobs great for it. Obviously, LinkedIn is there as well as a social network where you can really start to build those networks. And you can look for jobs there. And actually, what I'd like you to do as your final piece of homework, that was the final exercise, this is the final piece of homework, is to set yourself some steps. So we've been thinking about your long-term goal. When you've got that long-term goal, I want you to start taking steps straight away. In fact, it might be to rewatch this. You'll be sent a link at the end to rewatch the session. Maybe you're going to rewatch it, take a few notes. In the next week, you're going to try and book those sessions in. You're going to do some research. By the end of the month, I'm going to have worked out which of those jobs and careers, hone my lists down. By this time next year, where do you want to be? Try and have some goals that are long-term goals are fantastic, but unless you do things every single day in the meantime, you're never going to reach them. And check in with yourself every week and every month to see how well you're progressing. And those goals may need to change as you learn more. When you're speaking to your trusted friends, catching up to talk about this whole thing, you might want to share your steps with them too. Because if you use those as your accountability buddy, then you're much more likely to make the progress and meet those deadlines than you would if you just you're only holding yourself accountable. So share it, talk about it, almost start to talk it into reality. Okay, I can see from Sarah we've got no questions. What I'd love you to do is pop in into that Q&A area and let Sarah know what your next steps are. What are you going to do differently from today? Lots of courses out there to book. One of those things might be to head over to goo.gle/career search UK. And if you think you're going to enjoy getting yourself some digital skills, then that's a great place to go for. You can make it a free resource. You can work at your own pace and stand out to those future employers. Other than that, thank you so much. We are coming to the end of this first session this morning, but don't worry, we do have lots more for you. So first of all, thank you to you for joining. And thank you to Sarah for making everything work in the background. We'd love it if you could reach out on social media and let us know how you've enjoyed today's training. Use the hashtag BT Skills for Tomorrow. Don't forget to check out the up and coming free events you can find up from Out About. And you can find more about the Skills for Tomorrow program by visiting bt.com/skills for tomorrow. Before you leave us, I would love it if you could spare a moment to complete our super quick feedback poll. They should be on the screen now. And they're basically so we can keep improving those results for you. If you want to re-watch the session, we're going to share that link for you now in that Q&A chat area. And don't forget that in 15 minutes at 10:45, my wonderful colleague Hannah is going to be talking about growing your business through sustainability. So if you're keen to join that, we're going to share out a new link where you can, moderator's going to share us out a new link, and that's where you can jump across and watch that session as well. We really do hope you continue to do it, but otherwise, if not, thank you so much for joining me today. And we hope to see you soon on another Google Digital Garage partnership with BT Skills for Tomorrow.